Hello, welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Amherst. I'm Reverend Michelle Buheit, the minister of this congregation. We are so glad you have chosen to join us in worship. Please see our website, uuamherst.org, or the emailed weekly update for opportunities to connect and grow your soul. Our service today includes music from Adam Schmidt and some of the UUCA singers. The interdependent web is a mystery beyond our full understanding, yet we are participants in it. As we light our chalice, may we commit ourselves to make a difference in the lives of the living, all living systems on this lovely planet we call home. And may we commit ourselves to the future generations, to be worthy ancestors, leaving a legacy of love and hope. Our opening prayer comes from Barbara Pescan, Holding It All. Thou. I smile when I say it. Thou, meaning all that is inside me and outside me. Sometimes a tree, sometimes mountains, or the running doe, or the leaping heart of a finch held between my palms, or a child's hand, no bigger than a tulip flower, with space in it yet for fear, resting in my own. Thou, that listens to our tentative and doubting dreams. Thou, hear us into certain song, how we are touched by the lives of our neighbors and kin, by their sorrows, healing, and hopes. In a silence we carry with us all day long, we whisper the names of our people, broken and healing, with us and separated, struggling and reborn. May we all be held by someone, by something like hands enfolding the pulse and flutter of a bird, gently, carefully, and slowly opening. Thou, let it be. Our Time for All Ages today comes from an essay in the spring 2016 issue of Yes magazine. The essay is by Derrick Jensen and entitled, When I Dream of the Planet in Recovery. Jensen eloquently invites us to envision a future, a time after, when humankind steps aside and allows the abundant living earth to replenish and heal itself. Allow the words and images to reach your heart and give yourself to hope. In the time after, the buffalo come home. At first, only a few, shaking snow off their shoulders as they pass from mountain to plain. Big bulls sweep away snowpack to the soft grass beneath. Big cows attend to and protect their young. The young themselves delight, like the young everywhere, in the newness of everything they see, smell, taste, touch, and feel. Wolves follow the buffalo, as do mallards, gadwells, blue-winged teal, northern shovelers, northern pintails, redheads, canvasbacks, and tundra swans. Prairie dogs come home, bringing with them the rain, and bringing with them ferrets, foxes, hawks, eagles, snakes, and badgers. With all of these come meadowlarks and red-winged blackbirds. With all of these come the tall and short grasses. With these come the prairies. In the time after, the salmon come home, swimming over broken dams to forests that have never forgotten the feeling of millions of fish, turning their rivers black and roiling, filling the rivers so full that sunlight does not reach the bottom of even the shallow streams. In the time after, the forests remember a feeling they've never forgotten, of embracing these fish that are as much a part of these forests as are cedars and spruce and bobcats and bears. In the time after, the beavers come home, bringing with them caddisflies and dragonflies, bringing with them ponds and pools and wetlands, bringing home frogs, newts, and fish. Beavers build and restore, working hard to unmake the damage that was done and to remake forests and rivers and streams and marshes into what they once were, into what they need to be, into what they will be again. In the time after, plants save the world. In the time after, the oceans are filled with fish, with forests of kelp and communities of coral. In the time after, the air is full with the steamy breath of whales, and the shores are laden with the hard shells and patient, ageless eyes of sea turtles. Seals haul out on sea ice, and polar bears hunt them. In the time after, buffalo bring back prairies by being buffalo, and prairies bring back buffalo by being prairies. Salmon bring forth forests by being salmon, and forests bring back salmon by being forests. Cell by cell, leaf by leaf, limb by limb, prairie and forest and marsh and ocean, by prairie and forest and marsh and ocean, they bring the carbon home, burying it in the ground, holding it in their bodies. They do what they have done before and what they will do again. The time after is a time of magic. Not the magic of parlor tricks, not the magic of smoke and mirrors, distractions that point one's attention away from the real action. No, this magic is the real action. This magic is the embodied intelligence of the world and its members. This magic is the rough skin of sharks without which they would not swim so fast, so powerfully. This magic is the long tongue of butterflies and the flower that welcomes them. This magic is the brilliance of fruits and berries that grow to be eaten by those that then distribute their seeds along with the nutrients necessary for new growth. This magic is the work of fungi that join trees and mammals and bacteria to create a forest. This magic is the billions of beings in a handful of soil. This magic is the billions of beings that live inside you, that make it possible for you to live. In the time before, the world was resilient, beautiful and strong. It happened through the magic of blood flowing through capillaries, and the magic of tiny seeds turning into giant redwoods, and the magic of long relationships between rivers and mountains, and the magic of complex dances between all members of natural communities. It took life and death, and the gifts of the dead forfeited to the living to make the world strong. In the time after, this is understood. In the time after, there is sorrow for those who did not make it. Passenger pigeons, great auks, dodos, striped rock snails, Charles Island tortoises, Steller's sea cows, Darling Downs hopping mice, Guam flying foxes, Saudi gazelle, sea mink, Caspian tigers, quaggas, laughing owls, St. Helena olives, Cape Verde giant skinks, silver trout, Galapagos amaranths. But in those humans and non-humans who survive, there is another feeling, emerging from below and beyond and around and through this sorrow. In the time after, those still alive begin to feel something almost none have felt before, something that everything felt long, long ago. What those who come in the time after feel is a sense of realistic optimism, a sense that things will turn out all right, a sense that life, which so desperately wants to continue, will endure, will thrive. We, living now in the time before, have choices. We can remember what it is to be animals on this planet, and remember and understand what it is to live and die such that our lives and deaths help make the world stronger. We can live and die such that we make possible a time after where life flourishes, where buffalo can come home, and the same for salmon and prairie dogs and prairies and forests and carbon and rivers and mountains. In the time before, the world was resilient, beautiful, and strong. It happened through the magic of blood flowing through capillaries, and the magic of tiny seeds turning into giant redwoods, and the magic of long relationships between rivers and mountains, and the magic of complex dances between all members of natural communities. It took life and death and the gifts of the dead forfeited to the living to make the world strong. In the time after, this is understood. When the time after arrives, there will be two times before. The time of long ago, when the magic of long relationships kept the earth and her inhabitants in the rhythm of birth, life, death, and rebirth, and the time of not quite so long ago, the time we are in now, aware of the deep and pervasive wounds our species has inflicted upon the rest of the circle of all living things, and ready to devote ourselves to a path of healing and reparation. Our grief and our love must inspire us to work in the present to create the time after, when balance has been restored and future generations will look back on the choices and sacrifices we made and call us worthy ancestors. Today I invite you to blink the mist of nostalgia and literary hyperbole from your eyes and mind. I invite you to set aside your equations and measurements. Don't get me wrong, you will need all of your faculties, heart and mind, sentiment, and vision. I simply ask that you step out from behind the walls of logic or emotion and open yourself to ways of thinking that may not be your primary way of being in the world. If I challenge your assumptions, allow yourself to observe your reaction without losing yourself in it. Now, let's take a moment to settle in while I give you a little context for today's service. As you may know, Unitarian Universalism is defined and guided by our principles and sources. We currently have 7 guiding principles, with an 8th principle under thoughtful consideration by our congregations. Unlike many religious traditions, ours is a living tradition, with decisions made laterally rather than hierarchically. We are always evolving and learning, and our faith evolves with us. At present, there are 6 sources that inform how we practice our faith. The first 5 sources were adopted in 1984. They include our own direct experience of transcending mystery and wonder, words and deeds of prophetic people that inspire us to acts of justice, the wisdom of world religions, Jewish and Christian teachings that inspire us to respond to God's love by loving others, and the teachings of science and humanism, encouraging us to use our reason. The 6th source was added in 1995 and was the result of a growing awareness of our connection to the earth as we affirmed earth-centered traditions and our relationship with all of life. In the context of the time before, when the relationship between mountains and rivers, prairie dogs and rainfall, buffalo and mallards was deeply etched into the rhythms of all life, it seems rather funny that it wouldn't occur to us to include that in the sources of our faith until the end of the 20th century. Yet, with humanity's special knack for reducing the earth and all living systems to resources for our comfort and convenience, as evidenced by our actions from time immemorial, well, at least we figured out before it was too late that we are part of something beyond our comprehension and deserving of our love and respect. I sometimes joke that of our 7 principles, we generally know the first and the last, with a bunch of good stuff in the middle that we can't always remember. Kind of an Oreo cookie theology. 2 yummy wafers with creamy goodness in the middle. We're really good at the first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of each person. And we mostly remember the 7th one, respect for the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part. The creamy goodness in the middle has to do with equity, compassion, justice, democracy, and creating a world community of peace. For today, I'll keep us connected to our 7th principle, respect for the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part. So we are holding 2 related ideas, our 6th source and our 7th principle, both of which acknowledge and celebrate our connectedness to all of life. Let's call this the greening of Unitarian Universalism. Of course, we didn't invent this. It's part of our history, our heritage, our lineage. Our worthy ancestors were the Transcendentalists, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, Margaret Fuller, the Alcotts, to name just a few. The Transcendentalist movement began in the early to mid-19th century At exactly the same time, the Industrial Revolution was remaking the landscape and choking the skies with the smoke of progress. A love and reverence for nature arose in the hearts and minds of our ancestors as the very earth herself was being pillaged for resources. The greening of our faith traces back farther than we can even begin to account. I suppose it could have stopped there, with our ancestors writing lovely poetry and falling in love with a pond, giving American literature students fodder for dreadfully shallow papers about nature for the next 100 years. But for all their love of words and extolling the virtues of the natural world, our worthy ancestors left a true legacy when they declared that the divine could be found not in heaven afar, but in the world, our world. The world was not a finished product created by a far-off deity. The world itself is sacred and alive. When we respond to the harm that is being perpetuated against our planetary home, we are not coming to the defense of God's creation. We are responding to the threat against the very source of life. That is like the difference between defending the governor's mansion and placing ourselves between the source of harm and First Mother. In my church office is a whiteboard upon which I've drawn a tree with a wide trunk and 3 main branches. The roots are as deep and wide as the branches stretching to the sky. The tree is my working metaphor for who we are as a community of faith, how we grow and are nurtured. The wide, strong trunk is our beloved community, the gathered congregation. The 3 main branches are relationship, context, and praxis, how we are with and love one another, the context of our theology of love and inclusion, and our praxis, how we live that into the world. The roots, the whole reason for the tree, represent nurturing loving, responsible members of the earth family. The roots are the greening of Unitarian Universalism. How we explain why we love the earth as a people of faith, well, that will fade and change. At root is our commitment to the greening not only of our faith, but of our community and our world. There is no higher calling than nurturing loving, responsible members of the earth family, a family that cares for all its people, human and not human, inclusive of color, creed, identity, and affection. A family that understands the long relationship between rivers and mountains, buffalo and prairie dogs, humans and beavers and forests. This is the greening of Unitarian Universalism. It is the present that leads to the time after, the time of promises fulfilled and a legacy of hope and care.
It's not easy being green, having to spend each day the color of the leaves. Well, I think it might be nicer being red or yellow or gold, or something much more colorful like that.
It's not easy being green. Seems you blend in with so many other ordinary things. And people tend to pass you over, 'cause you're not standing out like sparkles in the water or stars in the sky.
But green's the color of spring.
like a mountain,
or tall like a tree. When green is all there is to be, it may make you wonder why.
but why wonder? Why wonder?
I am green, it'll do fine.
It's beautiful.
And I think it's what I want to be. You shake Kermit's hand.
Good job, buddy.
So these are our water barrels, they're rain barrels. Had one donated by Ellen Newman, thank you, and one from Buffalo Niagara Waterkeepers. And so the reason we have these is because we have no running water back here. So if we collect rainwater, we can use that to irrigate any plants we might want to put back here. And the youth group painted them with their base primer coat of white today, and next week they're going to add on some colorful pictures. Oh, I hear something. Well, somebody's back there. I wonder who it is. Hello? Hello? Oh, hello.
Oh, hi.
It's Miss Green Jeans. She's an expert gardener. Put my mask on just to be safe.
I know I don't belong here, but I noticed that it was an ecology center. And so I decided to take a walk, and I noticed that there's not a lot of biodiversity here anymore.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we've got some very aggressive invasive woody species that have taken over the space. And I thought maybe I would just help the squirrels and other wildlife replant what may have been here before.
Well, thank you so much.
Would you like to help?
I'd love to.
You know what this is?
Is it a feather?
No, they are feather-like.
Oh.
Yeah.
Should they be blown away?
I think they should, because
okay.
they can be spread wherever. These are the milkweed seeds that the monarch butterfly feeds on. So here,
Thank you.
you can just let them fly away. Where they can go.
Miss Green, what is this?
Look at that. That's the pod from the milkweed, and now you can use this to decorate with.
Oh, it's so pretty. Well, you know, I believe we were planning to decorate some leaves.
Oh,
with
perfect.
natural objects.
Oh, that's perfect.
Closer to the
Here,
holidays.
take another one.
Ooh, thank
Spread
you.
some more seeds. Oops. Fly away, milkweed. Fly away. Oh, this one doesn't have the middle part, but it's still attractive.
So if we have some of these plants, it will help attract butterflies?
Yes.
Monarch butterflies? I love
Yes.
that. They're beautiful.
Yes. And then here's another kind of seed that butterflies eat that people don't know as much about. But these are parsley seeds, and the black and yellow swallowtail feed on parsley.
I didn't know that.
So I was down here pulling out some of the weeds, some of the not desired plants, and then leaving these scritchy, scratchy places. And then we can just throw some seed in and hope. Maybe. Hey, what else do we have? Oh, echinacea.
Echinacea,
That's coneflower. Pollinators love the flowers. Mm-hmm.
pollinators like bees.
Like bees, like wasps, like butterflies.
I know we need to help the bees. They're having a hard time of it.
They sure are. And our animal friends will help too. A lot of seeds have their little, they catch on their fur.
Yes, my dog gets things stuck in her fur.
Oh, yes.
You carry it around, falls off, and then it could grow something somewhere else.
This is, let's see what else I have in my, oh, this is Baptisia. This is false indigo. You can make a blue dye.
Really?
From it. Oh. Milkweed seeds are tickly. Yeah, so I would, even in little amounts, we can help. False indigo. It's a great time for collecting seeds. That time of year. And, and this is another medicinal plant called feverfew.
Feverfew. That's good for headaches.
Yeah. It's not native, but it will increase biodiversity. There's a lot of these, so. Oh, we can just throw them all over. And they're very polite. They play well with others. Oh, which plants are good or bad? Well, like biodiversity is very important to the ecosystem. And even though this is a small place, it's connected to everything else. So when a plant like this invasive honeysuckle, which I see throughout, it's everywhere, comes in and is allowed to flourish, it pushes out a lot of that biodiversity. You don't mind if I come back, do you?
No, I'd love to have you here.
Good.
Anytime you like.
Great.
What we do now makes a difference. The decisions and choices we make as individuals and as a community of faith will have an impact on us and on the larger community. 10 years ago, the UU Church of Amherst met the daunting qualifications to be named a green sanctuary with the Unitarian Universalist Association. We are currently working on our recertification because, just like our evolving living tradition, continuing as a green sanctuary is an ongoing process. Like everything in our lives, nothing is one and done. We must constantly revisit, reimagine, and renew our efforts to live into our principles. Our living tradition demands that we remain diligent, whether it is affirming the lives and experiences of people of color with Black Lives Matter, continuing to create a safe space for the LGBTQIA community and their families, feeding people through the Amherst Little Free Pantry, or any number of outreach projects in our community. Our theology of collective salvation in this lifetime calls us into service. This year, the Board of Trustees of our church identified our commitment to green issues as a priority. Part of that priority is the UUA recertification process, which, as noted, is underway. But it is deeper and wider than that. As we learned from Ms. Greenjeans, there is much we can be doing to make the living system of the church property more beneficial to wildlife and, with some care and vision for the future, perhaps contribute to the well-being of our wider community. What I find exciting is the possibility of inviting others into relationship with us and with the land that has been entrusted to our care. We acknowledge with deep humility and gratitude that this land was once under the care of the Haudenosaunee people. We are mindful of the many ways that the white colonists removed the people from their land, and we commit ourselves anew to the care and keeping of the land, sharing what we can and inviting others into relationship. How wonderful it will be when we have folks from the community, from many faith traditions, as well as those who are not looking for a religion, simply a place to make a difference. All of us working together to make our little corner of the world greener and more loving. We are in the place between. We are not in the time before. We are not in the time after. We are in the place between. We are in the pivotal place between. Neither here nor there. We are in the place of possibility, informed by what has been and inspired by what can be. What an amazing, exciting place to be, and a little scary. And yet, together, we are invincible. Together we build bridges of possibility, connecting what has been with what can be. Together, we embody the vision of a future that includes all of us, all of our voices and visions.
Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony.
Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With
Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmonies. Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony.
There is so much that divides us. As the months of the pandemic stretch on, we grow weary of our separation. Some of us had not seen loved ones since last winter, while others have lost beloveds without being able to hold their hands or murmur our goodbyes. We long for the gentle normalcy of intimate conversation, hearty handshakes, and friendly hugs. Beyond that, our spirits are heavy with the weight of fear and hatred as our country is torn asunder. It is easy to slip into despair and lose our way. As we move into a time of collective prayer and meditation, I offer this word of hope from the poet Wendell Berry in his poem, The Peace of Wild Things. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. Our time for all ages this morning closed with these words. We living now in the time before have choices. We can remember what it is to be animals on this planet, and remember and understand what it is to live and die, such that our lives and deaths help make the world stronger. We can live and die such that we make possible a time after, where life flourishes, where buffalo can come home, and the same for salmon and prairie dogs and prairies and forests and carbon and rivers and mountains. We living now in the time before, the time between, have choices. We can take our cue from the peace of wild things, resting in the grace of the world and healing our despair. We living at this time between are at a climate crossroads, a moment that requires creativity and courage. This fall, a group of us read and discussed Charles Eisenstein's book, Climate, A New Story. We were inspired and challenged by his ideas, and we were true to our skeptical heritage as we dove into a different viewpoint regarding the climate catastrophe. Eisenstein claims that we are trapped in a story of separation, a story that asserts that I am separate from you, and your well-being need not affect mine. We are caught up in a system of competition and domination. The story of separation reverberates through every institution of the modern world. We need a new story, a story of interbeing. He writes, "Who I am depends on who you are. The world is part of me, just as I am a part of it. What happens to the world is in some way happening to me. The state of the cultural climate or political climate affects the condition of the geoclimate. When one thing changes, everything else must change too." Eisenstein sees webs of connection throughout all living systems, not so very different from our own way of seeing the world through the lens of our Unitarian Universalist principles and sources. When we affirm and promote respect for the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part, we affirm a new and a very old paradigm of deep connection and interbeing. Eisenstein writes, "The ecological crisis is calling us to a deeper kind of revolution. Its strategy involves restoring what the modern worldview and its institutions have rendered nearly extinct: our felt understanding of the living intelligence and interconnectedness of all things. To not feel that is to be not fully alive. It is to live in poverty." That sense of interconnectedness is more than a mathematical formula. It is an emotional bond, a reverence for the source of life that creates and sustains us in relationship with all of life. The story of separation has trapped us in a lie that we are somehow different, above the rest of life on earth. The prevailing mythology of separation from the sacred that began in a garden, a mythology that made humankind more special than the rest, has wreaked havoc among humans, between humans and animal and plant life, and indeed, even altering the very foundations of the earth as humanity seeks to control and exploit natural resources. Many of us have already cast off the theology inherent in that mythology. Now we must be willing to see its destructive power toward all of life and choose a new way. Earlier, I used the language of a climate crossroads rather than crisis or catastrophe. For as catastrophic as the changes have been and will continue to be, if fear and threats were effective tools in getting us to change our ways, we'd have done it already. The facts have been in front of us for decades, and yet we remain unmotivated to change our habits and behaviors. The only true motivator for change is love. Until we love the world, not in the abstract, but in particular, loving this forest, this stream, those hawks, we will not find the will to do what is necessary to avert catastrophe. We are truly at a crossroads where the choices we make have the power to make possible the time after, when the buffalo and salmon and prairie dogs return with the rain. Eisenstein writes, "The land is dying before our eyes, as it has been doing since ancient times. We have to stop killing it. This is bigger than cutting greenhouse gas emissions. It is reversing a relationship to soil and sea that has been part of civilization for thousands of years. I'm sorry, but merely switching to so-called renewable energy sources is not enough. We are called to visit deep questions like, what are we here for? What is humanity's right role on earth? What does the earth want? What does the earth want?" What a radical question and notion, that the earth could want something from us, could want something for us. Yet earth is the very source of life, our first mother. He continues, "A story of interbeing, motivating earth healing neither contradicts nor depends on the story of saving the world from greenhouse gases. It supersedes it. The larger story of humanity in service to the healing and flowering of Gaia is already bursting to take over. It is already the real motivating force behind a lot of work that people legitimize with climate narratives. Ecological restoration gets a boost in funding and attention if you make it about climate change. But this is a dangerous strategy. Let's embrace the true motivation. Let's admit that we are acting from love of this forest, not for its instrumental role in global carbon sequestration, that we are acting from love of this soil, this lake, this estuary, this place, trusting that the health of one will contribute to the health of all, whether or not we can cite a climate argument to prove it. Acting from a place of love, from a place of relationship, is how we move from the time between to the time after. The time after we awaken from our stupor, when we reaffirm our place in the interdependent web and assume the responsibility of being part of the Earth family. Humanity has unique gifts to offer in relationship with the source of life. It was Carl Sagan who said that it is through our consciousness, our ability to wonder and question and foresee consequences, that the universe is able to experience itself. All of life is based in relationship. You know, it's not always easy being green. Our commitment to the greening of our faith and the greening of our world is a loving response to a world that is surpassingly beautiful and abundant, that is our first mother and the home for the generations to come. I close with these words with which Eisenstein concluded his book. All of the policies and practices I have described are within reach right now. The vision of a green world is not a fantasy, nor, however, is it realistic. What it is possible. It requires each one of us to dedicate ourselves unreasonably and with no guarantee of success to a unique form of service. It requires that we trust our knowing that a healed world, a greened world, a more beautiful world is truly possible. I believe that together we can make it so.
Deeds we accomplish.
this service with the prayer by Barbara Pescan with which we began. Holding it all. Thou. I smile when I say it. Thou, meaning all that is inside me and outside me. Sometimes a tree, sometimes mountains, or the running doe, or the leaping heart of a finch held between my palms, or a child's hand, no bigger than a tulip flower, with space in it yet for fear, resting in my own. Thou, that listens to our tentative and doubting dreams. Thou, hear us into certain song, how we are touched by the lives of our neighbors and kin, by their sorrows, healing, and hopes. In a silence we carry with us all day long, we whisper the names of our people, broken and healing, with us and separated, struggling and reborn. May we all be held by someone, by something like hands enfolding the pulse and flutter of a bird, gently, carefully, and slowly opening. Thou, let it be. Thank you for joining us in worship today. Please see the credits at the end of this service for information about the music and other worship elements. And do take a moment to visit our website, uuamherst.org, and click on the giving link, or text your gift to 833-987-1968. We now extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Travel light and travel easy till I see you once again. Travel light and travel easy, and remember I'm your friend.
Life is short, and we do not have much time to gladden the hearts of those who travel with us. So be swift to love and make haste to be kind. Amen.